Hi guys, TotallyDubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the Samsung Galaxy A7 2018. Now this is a mid-range phone from Samsung and has 3 cameras around the back. In this review we'll be looking at how well this does, and also how does it compare to its competitors such as Motorola's Moto G6 Plus and the Xiaomi Pocophone F1, and see how these phones, which cost around the same, around £250 to £300, and same in the US, around $300, compared to this Samsung mid-range phone. So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's talk about the build quality and certain features with the software. First I want to talk about facial recognition and unlocking. So your button for fingerprints is on the right hand side. Might be a slightly odd location to some, but it makes sense when you pick up the phone and you kind of want to unlock it with your thumb. So the thumb would be your best fingerprint to enroll. It does unlock pretty quickly, as you can see, like just to prove to you it's not facial recognition. It unlocks relatively quickly. I have no sort of complaints, especially at this range, this price range. However, I still prefer rear-mounted fingerprint sensors, but I understand why Samsung have kind of moved it to the right-hand side. Again, no complaints. I think it's a nice sort of design. It's also got facial recognition, so if I tap it with another finger, so you can just to prove to you it's not going to work, and then I just point it towards me, it unlocks really quickly, and that's very impressive. So you've got facial recognition and fingerprint sensor on the right. You can also obviously have a pattern or any pin or whatever you want to have. So no complaints there. It's definitely in terms of its price range, in terms of its class, it's very impressive. Now in terms of ports, yes, they've kept the 3.5mm jack, which is fantastic. There is a microUSB port over here, which I find slightly disappointing. I would have liked a USB-C port instead. There is also a 3-in-1 microSD card slash SIM card holder, which if I just pop out over here, you'll be able to see that it accepts dual SIM, and that's what explains Duos, which is at the back of the phone. This is market dependent, so it's not always the case, but nevertheless there's a microSD card slot, and the microSD card slot gives you an extra 512 gigabytes of storage on top of the 64 gigabytes internal storage that you get out the box. So you know, no complaints there. Volume rockers on the right hand side as well, and you know, it's pretty self-explanatory. In terms of the software, just like every Samsung phone, it uses TouchWiz. Now, I'm not to say it's kind of let down by TouchWiz. TouchWiz does add like extra functionalities that you wouldn't get with stock Android, and I understand why Samsung have it, especially for example if you want to have Bixby. Bixby is also included out of the home screen straight away via the Samsung launcher. But it's not something I personally liked. I felt it kind of made the phone a little bit more sluggish, and yes, you can speed up the animations and what have you, but it's still not like stock Android. So here the G6 Plus Motorola's phone just for me runs a lot better, and even though this has an Octa-core processor, which on paper performs better than Motorola's Moto G6 Plus's Snapdragon 630, it's just the experience just feels a little bit clunkier. It has Android 8 Oreo out the box, and of course I'm pretty sure it'll be upgraded to 9 over time, but at the time of making this video it's Android 8. In terms of its processing speed, as I said, you know, it's on par or a little bit better than the Moto G6 Plus, but it's nowhere to be seen in comparison to the Pocophone F1. Just to show you this, just got a few screenshots. So for example, Geekbench, you can see the score over here. You can compare this with your phone and run that on your phone as well, and you can see over here GFX Bunch, you're going to be expecting around 15-16 FPS on your normal game, so this is on Manhattan, and if you put really intensive games, so like not like PUBG but something like that, or Asphalt 8, then you know, expect about 5 to 6 FPS. You're not going to get great FPS, so it's okay for gaming casually, but not something I would really take in too seriously. In terms of battery life, it's actually really impressive. I must say, Samsung have included a relatively big battery, but it's mainly to the fact that it's 3,300 milliamp battery is really well optimized, and I got around 16 to 17 hours on doing some video benchmarks, and that is very impressive. That's far above its competitors by 2 to 5 hours, depending on what phone you compare it to. Very impressive to see this, and Samsung also do guarantee in terms of its battery that it's not going to degrade over time, which is something that is the case with some other manufacturers, so it's great to see this. In terms of the display, I must say I'm very impressed with what Samsung have done over here. At this price, they've got a Super AMOLED screen. It runs at 1080p, and because of its aspect ratio, which is 18.5 by 9, it means you've got a nice, sort of scrolling, but you can scroll and play games on it with a nice big screen, but not have to worry about its size. It's still a relatively easy phone to hold. Now, I've got medium-sized hands, and yes, I will struggle a little bit if I'm holding it down over here to go all the way to the top. But nevertheless, it is, just an average size phone nowadays. This is what phones usually come in sort of size. It's not like a iPhone 8 Plus, for example, type of size. It's a 6-inch display. Let's put it that way. With the standard phone, you've got Wi-Fi. You've got dual band Wi-Fi, so 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, which is great. Again, at this price range, it's nice to see that being included. You've got Bluetooth 5.0 as well, but it doesn't come with aptX codec, unfortunately. In terms of its cameras, so a closer look at its rear cameras, you've got 3 cameras and a flash, and you've got a front-facing camera as well. Now, the front-facing one is quite interesting because it is a whopping 24 megapixel f2.0, so it's going to capture plenty of details for your selfies, which is fantastic. If rear cameras, so there's 3 of them. You've got 24 megapixel, 8 megapixel, and 5 megapixel, coming at f1.7, f2.4, and f2.2 respectively. Now, these cameras do capture plenty of detail. I'm going to get into this in just a bit, but I was a little bit disappointed to find that it only records up to 1080p full HD recordings. It doesn't do anything more, and by that I mean you can record at 1080p, but you can't record at 60 FPS or 1440p. I guess why would you need to when you've got a 1080p phone, and where you're going to share it mostly is going to be probably 1080p, but I would have liked to see 60 FPS out the box as well. So that pretty much is a quick overview of the phone's UI and sort of my thoughts and opinion about its processor. Let's talk about its most interesting feature, the set of cameras at the back. Now, in terms of this camera, I'm going to let the pictures do the talking, but just running you through it, I would say that the A7 2018 really does a great job both in low light photography, close object macro sort of photography, and also broad daylight. It does have a slightly bluish, neutral, I would say colder tone than some might expect, but I must say overall the amount of detail this camera picks up, especially at this price range, is pretty class leading. There's no other phone out there around £300 that captures as much detail as this A7 2018. So in a summary, I would say that the camera, if it's really important to you and you've got, say, £300 budget, this phone is probably something that you'd want to consider. It might not have as fast as processor and be great as gaming in comparison to the Pocophone, Xiaomi's Pocophone F1. However, when it comes to photography, this one will definitely stand out. Now, in comparison to the G6 Plus, which to me, I would have considered one of the best or the best sub £300 phone when it comes to its cameras, this surprisingly beats it, and I wasn't expecting that. When I compared it, I actually realized that the G6 Plus actually comes a little behind the A7 2018. Are you going to notice this if you had either phone? Probably not. If you start zooming in, cropping in, that's when you start seeing the differences, or even looking at the image noise, this is going to come out on top. And plus, its fantastic selfie camera means that it's going to be really nice for taking selfies with your friends or family, or when you've got like a monument in the background. For example, there I was in the sort of Harry Potter showing that happens in London, took some selfies, and it's relatively good, especially in that sort of light, very low light. It captures plenty of detail. So very impressed with the set of cameras that Samsung have included. And essentially that is my sort of conclusion when it comes to this phone. If you're looking for one of the best smartphone cameras you can find under £300, then the A7 2018 is definitely one you should consider. So there we go, guys. I've been Totally Dubbed. Hopefully you enjoyed this review. If you have, make sure you give it a like, comment, subscribe, a favourite, share, all that good stuff. Let me know in the comments below what you think the best phone is under £300 or $320 odd. I'll be very much intrigued to know. And if I've missed anything, ask me in the comments below and I'll be sure to clarify that. Alright guys, take care and bye bye.